In the news tonight, His Majesty inaugurates the International Center for Synchrotron Light for Experimental Sciences and its applications in the Middle East, the first of its kind in the region. The third round of intra-Syria peace negotiations kicks off in Geneva with separate meetings between the UN Special Envoy and the government and opposition delegations. And UNICEF confirms 250 new cases of the cholera outbreak in Yemen, with at least 130 fatalities since late last month and 7.6 million people being at high risk of transmission. Good evening and welcome to a new edition of the news. Here are the details. His Majesty the King led the inauguration ceremony of the International Center for Synchrotron Light for Experimental Sciences and its application in the Middle East, or SESAMI, the first research center of its kind in the region. The SESAMI, a third-generation light accelerator, is located in Khulal in the Mafraq Governorate. It serves as a scientific research center in medicine, pharmacy, physics, chemistry, biology, and materials science. A group of scientists from SESAMI member states joined forces to set up what is to become the first scientific research lab in the Middle East, including experts from Jordan, Cyprus, Egypt, Iran, Pakistan, the Palestinian Authority, Turkey, and Israel, in addition to experts from observer states. A video screened at the ceremony showcased how energy is transformed into synchrotron light through electron acceleration to near light speed.
On behalf of all the SESAMI members, I welcome you to this day of celebration, which sees the fulfillment of many hopes and dreams. The hope that the funding needed to build SESAMI could be obtained, which happened. The hope that a group of initially inexperienced young people could build SESAMI and make it work. They have. And I'm proud to announce that 3 weeks ago, SESAMI reached its full design energy of 2.5 GeV. The hope that, nurtured by the training program, large numbers of scientists in the regions will become interested in using SESAMI. The fact that 55 proposals to use the first 2 beamlines have already been received shows that SESAMI will not be undersubscribed.
Building SESAMI has not been easy, and we had to overcome major financial, technological, scientific, and political challenges. But with the help and encouragement of many supporters in Jordan and around the world, the staff, the directors, and the Council of SESAMI did a superb job in completing the construction of the machine. Today, we are witnessing this great big success, but still, this is the end of a phase and the beginning of a new important phase.
His Majesty King Abdullah and U.S. President Donald Trump discussed in a telephone conversation efforts to reach political solutions to regional conflicts. His Majesty and Trump also reviewed actions underway to combat terrorism within a holistic approach, in addition to Jordanian-U.S. cooperation and the existing strategic partnership between the two countries. Later in Washington, the U.S. President held talks with Turkish President Tayyip Erdogan, coming on the heels of the U.S. administration's decision to send weapons to Kurdish fighters of YPG in Syria and Turkey's request for the extradition of Fethullah Gulen, a U.S.-based Muslim leader Erdogan blames for the attempted military coup in Turkey last year. Earlier this month, the U.S. announced it would supply weapons and military equipment to Kurdish forces battling Daesh in Syria, despite strong opposition from Turkey. A Pentagon statement said they are the only force on the ground that can successfully seize Raqqa in the near future. For its part, Turkey is demanding that the Raqqa offensive be done with the Free Syria Army and not the Kurdish elements. As for Gulen, Turkish officials have officially requested his extradition to stand trial in Turkey. In remarks to the media with the Turkish president, Trump commended U.S. relations with Turkey, saying he looked forward to joint efforts in the fight against terror groups.
We support Turkey in the first fight against terror and terror groups like ISIS and the PKK and ensure they have no safe quarter, the terror groups. We also appreciate Turkey's leadership in seeking an end to the horrific killing in Syria. The Syrian civil war shocks the conscience of the whole world, and all you have to do is look on the front page of the papers today and you'll see exactly what we're talking about. We also support any effort that can be used to reduce the violence in Syria and create the conditions for a peaceful resolution. I look forward to working together with President Erdogan on achieving peace and security in the Middle East, on confronting the shared threats, and on working toward a future of dignity and safety for all of our people.
After meeting with Erdogan, Trump called his meeting with Russian officials at the White House last week as successful, amid reports that he compromised America's national security by revealing classified information to Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov and the Russian ambassador in Washington. President Donald Trump boasted that the meeting in question was a success. Earlier, Trump confirmed in a series of tweets that he shared information with Russian officials while hosting them. Trump defended his move, saying he had an absolute right to do so as commander-in-chief and that he discussed with the Russians facts pertaining to terrorism and flight safety. A report by the Washington Post yesterday quoted two U.S. officials saying that Trump had shared highly classified information about a planned Daesh operation supplied by a U.S. ally in the fight against the terrorist group. The Kremlin dismissed the report as complete nonsense. The developments come close on the heels of Trump's contentious dismissal of FBI Director James Comey, who was investigating allegations of Trump's ties to Russia. A new round of Geneva talks aimed at resolving the Syria crisis kicked off today with a meeting between the Syrian government delegation and UN Special Envoy Staffan de Mistura. Upon arrival of the two delegations yesterday, de Mistura said the new round would be shorter and more business-like in order to achieve efficiency and make real progress. He stressed there will be no solution to Syria's devastating six-year civil war without a political settlement, saying the alternative is surrendering to the facts on the ground. De Mistura met separately with a Syrian opposition delegation ahead of what is dubbed as proximity talks, in which the two sides are not expected to speak face-to-face. This round of intra-Syria peace negotiations is the third this year. While some progress on the humanitarian front has been achieved, opposing delegations remain at odds as to what the future peaceful Syria might look like. In Syria, meanwhile, more than 1,000 rebels and their families left an opposition-held district of Damascus, completing an agreement between the Syrian government and rebels. In 2 days of evacuations, over 3,000 people have left Qaboon, paving the way for the government to regain control of the area. They headed for areas east of Damascus or for the northwestern province of Idlib. And moving to Iraq, where forces have dislodged Daesh terrorists from all but 12 square kilometers in Mosul after planes dropped leaflets into the city telling civilians the battle was nearly won. 7 months into the U.S.-backed campaign, the terrorists now control only a few districts in the western half of Mosul, including the Old City, where the group is expected to make their last stand. A spokesman for the U.S.-led coalition said the group is now completely surrounded in the city. The Iraqi government is pushing to declare victory by the holy month of Ramadan.
In Mosul, the enemy is completely surrounded. Their fighters are being killed and their resources are being destroyed. The enemy is on the brink of total defeat in Mosul.
The terrorist organization is now controlling around 10% of the area of West Mosul. Only a few kilometers are remaining, and our troops continue to advance into districts, and probably in the coming hours we will announce the liberation of more districts. We reassure everyone that in a very short time, God willing, we will declare the liberation and clearing of West Mosul and raise the Iraqi flag over the Old City.
To Yemen, where a cholera outbreak has killed at least 130 people since late last month. Today, UNICEF has confirmed some 250 new cases, while only a few medical facilities are still functioning and 2/3 of the population is without access to safe drinking water. Pumps to sanitize the water supply sit idle for lack of fuel. According to the World Health Organization, 7.6 million people live in areas at high risk of cholera transmission. Speaking in Geneva, UNICEF spokesperson reviewed the health crisis facing the country, already suffering lack of food, water and medical services. He said that at least 100 people have died from the acute disease since April 27. Cholera is highly contagious and can be contracted from ingesting contaminated food and water.
Over 11,000 cases of diarrhea reported so far across the country, of which over 250 cases are confirmed for cholera. Yemenis are staring at yet another public health crisis in the making. Over 130 dead so far, of which some are confirmed to be because of cholera.
Back to home news, and a three-day international conference on adventure tourism convened by the Dead Sea today, hosting over 200 people representing travel agencies, tour operators and trip advisors to showcase the country's treasures to adventure seekers. You can walk through ancient Roman ruins in Amman, Ajloun, Jarash and Qais, scuba dive in Aqaba, hike in Wadi al-Mujib and rejuvenate by the Dead Sea. Minister of Tourism and Antiquities Lina Annab told the conference at the opening, as she highlighted the kingdom's diverse landscapes, breathtaking adventure sites that blend antiquity with modernity, as well as business and development opportunities await the visitor. Annab promised attendees. Participants watched a promotional video of Jordan and listened to visitors' tales of their adventures in Jordan, the last edition being the Jordan Trail from Qais to the Red Sea, which ended in Aqaba last week. Prime Minister Hani al-Mulki attended the opening session, deputizing for His Majesty the King. The conference is organized by the Jordan Tourism Board and the Adventure Travel Trade Association and aims to create partnerships in the tourism industry and support the creation of sustainable adventure travel markets.
We in Jordan have identified adventure tourism as a strategic type of tourism that builds on Jordan's competitive advantage while offering an array of investment opportunities in micro, small, medium enterprises, promoting innovations and sustainable growth. We are currently working on a nationwide investment master plan revolving around rural and adventure tourism. This plan will help us in pinpointing and promoting specific opportunities, all geared towards employment generation and the development of enterprises where the economic benefits are reaped directly by the local communities.
Represent more than 10 countries, mostly from the region, but also from Europe and North America and Asia. Tour operators, travel agents, and media from around the world are here to learn about you, Jordanians, what makes Jordan special, and the region special, and what new opportunities are available to adventure travelers from around the globe. These industry professionals have just explored your region. Some have been here before or to other countries in the region. Your time is now to meet them, educate them on what is available.
And in Amman, Minister of Foreign and Expatriate Affairs Ayman Safadi received UNESCO Director General Irina Bokova and discussed whether cooperation between Jordan and the UN organization in the education and cultural spheres, as well as efforts to preserve historic sites in the kingdom. Separately, Safadi welcomed the International Atomic Energy Agency Director General Yukiya Amano. The meeting reviewed the IAEA's support to Jordan's peaceful nuclear program and the agency's efforts to enhance nuclear security internationally, in addition to Jordan's role in promoting regional cooperation to confronting common challenges. Both Bokova and Amano were in Amman to attend the Sesame Center inauguration. His Majesty's discussion papers constitute a roadmap for building a model Jordanian state in the region, said Minister of Political Development and Parliamentary Affairs Musa Al-Mahaita at an educational conference in Karak. Mahaita was addressing a national education conference organized by the Karak Education Directorate and attended by a host of public officials and community representatives. He said public and private sector stakeholders, including government and civil society, are required to interpret and implement the ideas and concepts included in His Majesty's 7 discussion papers. Mahaita said in their total, the discussion papers reflect a realistic, in-depth grasp of the fundamentals of a democratic civil society that respects the rule of law and human rights and advocates moderation. His Majesty has published 7 discussion papers, the last of which focused on education. And addressing a media conference on hate speech and ideological security, Minister of State for Media Affairs Mohammed Al-Momani said it is the duty of the various media organs to confront hatred and violence and to denounce partitions among people. He said the media, whether mainstream or social media, is a powerful tool that influences people's opinions and therefore must be utilized to overcome the difficult challenges facing the country and the region through constructive dialogue rather than hate speech and a firm defense of joint national interests and goals. In attendance at the conference organized by the Zarqa University were a host of academics and researchers from Arab states. Lower House Speaker Atif Tarawne led heads and members of parliamentary blocs and committees on a tour of the military zone along the kingdom's eastern border, where they met army commanders of various units. The Eastern Zone Commander, Brigadier Mohammed Bani Yassin, briefed the House members on tasks the border guard and troops carry out to control the frontier and prevent infiltration and smuggling attempts through patrols and electronic surveillance. Tarawne said the visit was to show support to the armed forces and boost their morale. A key task of the Eastern Military Zone troops is to provide medical services and access of relief aid for refugees in the Ruqban refugee camp, which houses about 70,000 people. Tons of plastic garbage in the Pacific Ocean could disappear by half in 5 years with the help of inflatable collecting barriers. 22-year-old Dutchman Boyan Slat, who started his project called the Ocean Cleanup in 2013, plans to position a first barrier between Hawaii and California in 2018 to collect plastic swirling on currents in an area known as the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. Slat contends that hundreds of species are already threatened with extinction because of plastic pollution, the problem becoming more acute over time as larger chunks of plastic have broken down into smaller pieces and entered the food chain. The U-shaped flexible floating boom stretching 1 to 2 kilometers is designed to follow the currents. The screen is meant to catch anything from coin-sized plastic particles to large fishing nets. The collected plastic will then be brought back to shore and recycled.
We then figured was, instead of going after the plastic, we let the plastic come to us, using very long floating barriers which sort of float around to let the ocean clean itself, by using the natural ocean currents in our advantage. And now it turns out we can actually clean up 50% of this garbage patch in just 5 years' time.
Levi Siver of the United States, a former World Cup and now freestyle windsurfer, took part in an unprecedented challenge to come down a snowy mountain on a modified windsurfing board. Siver and his support team chose Mount Rishiri Island in northern Japan, where they spent 8 days filming his attempt. Each day involved Siver hiking to the summit of the 1,721-meter high peak, carrying his windsurf board in temperatures as low as -13 degrees Celsius. Siver needed to wait at the summit for winds that were less than 15 kilometers per hour, sometimes for up to 3 hours, to ensure that he had the right conditions. Apart from the occasional tumble, Siver emerged unscathed from his adventure and successfully achieved his aim of windsurfing on snow. Chelsea are celebrating yet another Premier League title triumph this season, and the future looks bright for the Blues, who look well placed to dominate for years to come. As a result, Conte is the fourth Italian to win the Premier League title 1 year after Claudio Ranieri inspired Leicester City to their incredible triumph. Chelsea have been out and out the best team in the English top flight this season, turning their form around after a shaky start to the season. Following their 4-3 victory against Watford yesterday, fireworks lit up the sky in southwest London as a final whistle was blown, while blue and white streamers rained on the pitch. And finally, for a quick look at the weather, moderate conditions continue across the kingdom for the rest of tonight, with a low of 19 degrees Celsius in Amman. Tomorrow, relatively hot conditions prevail in the hilly areas, while high temperatures are expected in the Badia and the Dead Sea, with northwesterly moderate to brisk winds. The Gulf of Aqaba should also expect hot conditions, while winds will be northerly moderate and the sea is slightly high. Here now is the temperatures forecast for tonight and tomorrow. And to close, here's a reminder of the day's top stories. His Majesty inaugurates the International Center for Synchrotron Light for Experimental Sciences and its applications in the Middle East, the first of its kind in the region. The third round of intra-Syria peace negotiations kicks off in Geneva with separate meetings between the UN Special Envoy and the government and opposition delegations. And UNICEF confirms 250 new cases of the cholera outbreak in Yemen, with at least 130 fatalities since late last month and 7.6 million people being at high risk of transmission. And with this, we come to the end of this edition of the news. I'm Ali Tuqan. Thank you for joining us and have a good night.